the Empire will live on.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages. This is the third episode of the Rose Experience, my interview-based podcast where I have people big and small, tall and wide, whatever, to come on. Joining me today, I'm very privileged to have Daniel and Vinny from Final FanTV. What's going on, guys?
Man, thank you so much for having us on, and we're happy to be here. Yeah, it's going to be awesome. We're going to talk about some Final Fantasy. I'm the warrior of hype.
I love it.
Is my moniker on that.
Vinny, what's your tagline, man? You got a lot to do. Warrior of hype.
Yeah, I go Firaga Fighter because my profession is I'm a firefighter, and that's just something I've used for a while.
I mean, knowing
this is better. Like his was so good that I was like, all right, look, man, the Firaga Fighter is so good. I need a good one, and I got that's why I got the Warrior of Hype.
Warrior of Hype is the play on the Warrior of Light, of course. Warrior of Darkness.
Yeah, well, that would be cool too. Yeah.
You guys were a little bit older, because then it would just be Fire 3 or Fire 2.
Well, that is the correct way to say it. Yes.
So we've actually had this conversation before that I should change it to Fire 3 Fighter.
The Fire 3 Fighter.
Fire 3. That would work too. Mm-hmm. I like that.
But my favorite Final Fantasy is Final Fantasy X. So that's where I was around for Final Fantasy VII when, it was like Fire 1, Fire 2, Fire 3. Mm-hmm. But since 10 was my favorite, and I just took a spell from that one.
There you go. Works, man. It's definitely one of my favorites, too. And I think we'll get into all that. But we are talking about the franchise of the moment, I suppose, is Final Fantasy. And sometimes it can be slim pickings for our favorite franchises, which is crazy because Square likes to do what Square does. But we've got a glut of stuff to talk about, which is super awesome because obviously it's my favorite franchise, and I assume it's probably yours as well.
Oh, for sure, man. Yeah.
This is great. So why don't we just start with you guys introduce yourselves. Tell me a little bit about yourselves, or tell the 10 people listening about yourselves, and we can go from there.
Been there, man. But yeah, I'm Daniel, Warrior of Hype. I guess started Final FanTV just to kind of celebrate the franchise. And me and Vinny would sit there when we would go to work. I worked for Nabisco, he worked for Target, and I'd go in there to stock the cookies, and we wouldn't do any work. We would just sit there and talk about Final Fantasy in the aisle for hours, not getting any work done. So, yeah, I mean, I was just like, dude, we can do a podcast out of this for sure.
We knew what aisles to hide down to. The perfect food aisles to hide down, like all the health food that was always, nobody would ever went down.
So when did you guys meet? How old were you?
Oh, that's when we met, right? Vinny, it was God, that was a couple years ago, and at this point, 6 years ago.
6 years ago.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, 5 or 6 years ago, and then from there, I had started a YouTube channel that just kind of didn't do anything, couldn't get any traction, and I was like, well, it's pretty broad because it was all like the whole spectrum of video games, mm-hmm. and we would just cover all the news and everything, and I was like, all right, in order to get traction, I felt like we needed to focus on one thing, and I was like, that's an easy thing for me. Final Fantasy is obviously that's what we're most passionate about when it comes to the whole industry in its thing. But it was Final Fantasy for us. So me and Vinny met about 6 years ago, though, and then a couple years later, we ended up starting the podcast or the Final FanTV.
Yeah, almost 2 years ago.
Yeah,
coming up on 2 years.
Coming up on 2 years.
When is the When's the anniversary, quote unquote?
That's the final anniversary is what we're calling it. So that way, when for this October, it'll be final anniversary 2. You know, we're keeping the spirit alive. So you think it's the final anniversary, but just like in Final Fantasy fashion, it is not the final.
Never.
You know.
Never.
So we got Final Anniversary 2 in October.
Be a sequel to the final anniversary, or
Yeah, that's right.
And there might be a Crystallis, something, I don't know, some shit we didn't even know about.
Little subtitle that we'll throw in there. Final Anniversary Rebirth.
That's right.
It's gonna be final podcast Brave versus 13.
Yeah,
Brave.
Spirit Times 2. That's right. So, you love from Final Fantasy. You guys you loved it. What was the game that each of you? What really made you fall in love with Final Fantasy?
You want to start, Benny?
Sure. So when I was younger, I would go to Queens to visit my godfather, and he had this Super Nintendo that I would just go upstairs and start playing, and I didn't know what any of the games were. I played this bottle cap game that was pretty fun, and then I found this high fantasy game, and it was like Endgame. It turned out to be Final Fantasy, Final Fantasy IV, and it was Endgame, but I think it was 4. Is 4 the one with the Mist Dragon?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, it was 4, and so it was Endgame, and I just like making the characters do the spells and the summons. That was like my first, I guess, exposure to the fantasy style, fantasy theme, any type of fantasy media. I was real young, and so every time I went to Queens, I would play that, and then I finally decided to start a new game, and it was I had Kane use jump when fighting the Mist Dragon, and then I beat the Mist Dragon while he was still mid jump, so he never came back down, and then after that fight, he's gone anyway, and I was just like, oh no, I screwed something up. But that was like the first time that I played like a video game where I thought my actions have consequences, and then from there I was like, this is like a choose your adventure type of thing, and it was just like love at first sight after that.
That's awesome. Daniel?
Yeah, so I guess it started for me back when 1997, when I was 7 years old, and I wasn't allowed to play rated teen games at the time. so my older brother Sean would play it, and he would go downstairs and play it on the in that family room, and I'd go downstairs, sneak on down there, and couch is facing away from where I was, so I'd go down there and kind of like hide behind the couch and just kind of watch him play Final Fantasy VII. And just watching him play that game at 7 years old, I say this on the show, like it planted the seeds of my imagination. Like it planted those seeds, such a formative age, 7. And then, eventually, my brother Sean, he knew I was there. So he knew I was watching him play it. So he eventually convinced our mom to let me play it. And man, just playing that game, like I said, imagination took root there. And every day I would just think about stories that I'd create in my head that were very like Final Fantasy, and just go to school and have my friends be my party members, and like we're out at recess looking like a bunch of dummies just standing still, waiting for our turn to slash air, and like it really took root. And I mean, basically like I said, man, whenever I think of stories, even to this day, like if I'm thinking in my head of a story, it is very, very Final Fantasy. And that all came from Final Fantasy VII. And of course, I'd be remiss if I didn't bring it up, but like my brother Sean came down he got cancer. So when he passed away, that was such a the theme of Final Fantasy VII, right? Like the Final Fantasy VII, the live stream, and all of that other stuff about Aerith and like how the characters handled that death and everything like that. it connected so much to Final Fantasy VII, and then from there on out, even like Final Fantasy X and like all this other, the Final Fantasy is just so rooted in reality that I took hold of that. But most importantly, Final Fantasy VII, since Sean introduced me to the game, and then the game helped me cope or handle it as, you know, in a way. So yeah, that's the importance now. It hasn't become just a passion for the game now. It's become part of me, I guess. You know, like that's really how it became something more than a video game for me.
Wow. Thanks. Yeah. I'm so sorry, first off, to hear that about your brother. Thank you. Thank you very much for sharing that with me. And it does, RPGs, video games as a medium have that power to bring, you know, I'm not trying to be, you know, the power of friendship and stuff like that, but they have that way to bring people together, and you have those nostalgic times, and that is obviously Final Fantasy VII, something that'll always be there for you and your brother, that glue that brings him back to you. I mean, we always have memories, but those will be so vivid whenever you play that game, and that's pretty special, man. Wow.
Yeah, it's like you said, man, whenever I turn on Final Fantasy VII, I feel closer to him. So yeah, it's more than a game at this point, you know.
Rest in peace, Sean.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you.
For me personally, I mean, I'm a bit older than you guys. RPGs as a whole, Phantasy Star 1 was the game that brought me into this. I was a Sega kid through and through. I feel blessed for that, because I feel Nintendo kids never gravitated to Sega. They just played Nintendo. But whereas Sega kids, we got everything, because most people had Nintendo, so I had to play that eventually. But in terms of Final Fantasy, obviously I played Final Fantasy 1, and it was awesome, but I thought Phantasy Star was better. But when I got to the Super Nintendo, it definitely was Final Fantasy 2, what we now know as 4, is what really brought me in. I was just completely blown away. I remember when I got it, we drove over to Buffalo, as we did in the winter for a basketball tournament, went to the Galleria Mall, the Walden Galleria, and I saw this beautiful red cardboard box sitting on the shelf. And I snagged it, and I remember the whole time, couldn't play. It took me 2 weeks after our trip to get home. I popped that thing in, and the beginning is so strong to that game. It just brought me in, like I said, all the way to the Mist Dragon, Kane, all the characters, the deaths, well, sort of deaths anyway. But
burning the village at the beginning, being the one that did that.
And even some of the, like, it wasn't just the, like you said, Vinny, it wasn't, you know, we know now that the games can be much more, but at that time, that just seemed like the biggest a game could ever be to me. And there was these side stories, I felt like Yang with Sylph and the spoon, and, you know, finding the secret summoning village that Rydia grew up in, and you could get the secret summons there. Like, that game was awesome to me, and it always will be one of my very, very favorites of all time. So that's, ever since then, I've been lost. Like, the Final Fantasy orchestral, I think it was Final Fantasy IX, that's the theme that walked me out at my wedding and everything.
Oh, really?
So,
that's awesome.
I had everybody, we had like a destination wedding. I was like, you know, what's that song? I'm like, it's Final Fantasy IX orchestral. Yeah.
Oh, that's so cool. That's really cool.
It worked really well. Yeah. My wife puts up with my habit and stuff like that.
So. I posted a meme this morning that I had to create it myself, because I saw somebody else use it. I don't know if you've ever seen it, where it's like this guy, he's got a beer in his hand.
Memes.
Huh?
I only steal memes, so.
I stole it. Like, I just straight up stole it and then erased what they had to say, and I had to put mine because I bring this up because you said your wife, you brought your wife into it. So, like, he's like holding a beer, and he's like kind of talking intensely to her, and she's just like, whoa, okay, like just kind of like backing away. And I'm like, that was me literally this morning talking about how the plates in Final Fantasy VII Remake are 300 meters above ground, but in the original they're only 50 meters above ground, so it's less oppressive in Remake. There's not pollution going on, like, it's everybody's a community. And like, I was talking to my wife this morning, just randomly sprung this on her, and she's just like, okay.
And that meme goes, I love it, because it's like this short sort of muscle dude just corners this hot chick who's afraid. Yeah, that thing works with so many. Yeah, it's great.
But that's really cool about how Final Fantasy IV is the game. You know, like you said at the beginning, before we went live, you were talking about how, you know, you're 40s and we're 30s, and like it's like Final Fantasy IV was your entry point, or Final Fantasy II. But like that's really cool because a lot of the people that we talk to, they're always like 7 or 10. You know what I mean? Like 7 or 10, but you saying
3 or 6 definitely was a little bit later, but I feel like the people that loved 3 or 6, let's just call it 6 for the sake of it. People as Super Nintendo, right? But most people who love 6 already knew Final Fantasy IV. I mean, like I said, I played the first one, really, really liked it, but I have to admit, in terms of my RPGs specifically, I like characters that are dictated to me. I don't like a blank slate character. Like, I want to know what the story you have, the defined character classes. It was even something that 12 that kind of bothered me that they rectified with the Zodiac edition. You know, you find that it just every character could be ultimately the same, and even though whatever, it's still a great game, but that always bothered me. But yeah. I mean, Final Fantasy IV is in my top favorite as well. Like it's up there, and I didn't actually discover at the end. Like, I think we'll close on like what our favorites are and stuff.
Okay. All right.
First of all, just before we move on to the next, congratulations on your channel, guys. I really like what you're doing. If you don't, I mean, we'll show you out at the end. But again, it's Final FanTV, and they're celebrating their 2nd year anniversary in October.
Yeah. So much, yeah.
Yeah. I wanted to talk to somebody because I run another podcast called The Grizzled Veterans because we're really old, and that's what we do. We never talk about current stuff, but it's hard for us to get together sometimes with busy life and kids. I need to talk about Final Fantasy with someone. You guys decide to come in, and we have this glut of information, so I think we'll start right at the top. And State of Play happened 2 weeks ago now, I think.
State of Play was at top of the month.
Yeah, and we finally got that second trailer for Final Fantasy XVI, and I mean, I think we're all on the same page here with it, and I gauged your reaction video, but I'll just leave it to you guys. Let's take the temperature of the room on Final Fantasy XVI right now.
Okay. Vinny, I've been talking a lot. Go ahead, Vinny.
That's fine. So after seeing what they had to show us from State of Play, so I feel like not a lot of questions were answered, and I have more questions after watching the second trailer. And we did a lot of speculation after it came out. I mean, we watched it basically frame by frame several times live. But I play like a bunch of other games, and a lot of people, play Final Fantasy, and we talk about that as well. And I tried to get their, I tried to gauge how they felt about it seeming like they're going with a single player, not a party system. And a lot of my friends are not super excited about that, which made me feel a little less excited. But I personally don't care if it's a party or a single player, because I feel like with the story that 16, what it seems like they're trying to convey is that this is going to be a really intimate story with Clive. And I feel like it being a single player, and then seeing some of the screenshots, and then our guesses at it being sort of an open world. I don't know if you saw Daniel's video about the map and how it's how he has it kind of planned out, if it's going to be open world or if it's going to be more of like a sectioned off open area. But to me, it feels like when he was explaining that, it felt more like an Elden Ring kind of vibe, where it's like this one person is on this grandiose experience, this large scale journey, and I feel like you're just going to get more intimate with your character If it's just one person, you have to worry about one person's getting fleshed out, and that one person's relationship with all of these secondary characters. So, I mean, that was the biggest thing for me, was trying to find out if it was going to be a single player or a party system.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the second trailer kind of gave that to me by basically, I mean, there are some hints that you might get to play as other people, because we did notice that Clive's name is under the health bar, and if
at times it was almost like, you know, at times it wasn't, at times it was, and it's just like, why? That's the kind of stuff we just kept breaking down.
Daniel's reaction in a minute, but let's stay on the combat thing, because I think it's a big stickler for a lot of people. I mean, I'll just preface with this. One thing I always feel about Final Fantasy is people always want to go, you know, I want my traditional Final Fantasy. I want my traditional this. And one thing I'll just tell you, like, Final Fantasy has never really been about tradition. Yes, it has traditional things. It has your Moogle, although they came later, and Chocobo's over there, these staples. But in terms of combat, it's always evolved. Even when it was turn-based, you know, ATB, then we moved forward. Even in Final Fantasy X, there was modifications to that. They've always been on the cutting edge of not only gameplay innovations within the genre, but also cutting edge visuals. You know, you say, why they always are gonna, games need to be like this, let's push them out quicker. Look at every Final Fantasy, pretty much ever, like Final Fantasy VII, PS1, to the hill. Then you look at the jump from 7 to 8, insane. People never, and that was like 2.5 years after. Like, Final Fantasy has always pushed the envelope in terms of gameplay within the genre, visuals and presentation, and sounds. And sometimes not for the better. Sometimes it's hurt it, but at least they're not afraid to do it. And I just think in terms of the combat, while Vinny, I agree with a lot of the assumptions being made. I think a lot of people are kind of jumping the gun just because we don't have a lot to go on. I don't think, if it's just Clive who we play as, I'm cool, because I trust Naoki Yoshida implicitly. I don't know if you guys played 14, or I'm sure you know all about it, even if you don't, right?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I have so much respect for Yoshi P. Yeah.
And you know, with the DMC guy, his name escapes me at the moment, in charge of it. And honestly, they're really cagey with these trailers. I guarantee there's a lot of shit that's been on. By the way, you can swear on this podcast if you want to.
All right, good.
Yeah, there's a lot of shit that they, you know, carefully. They're very, very. Every second of these trailers is finely crafted and tuned, and you know, they don't give you anything that they don't want to. So they haven't. There's a reason they haven't answered that question yet. You know, and I don't think. And the reason if it was just a single player, I mean, there's single player games, but a single character game, I really don't think Yoshida would be afraid to answer that question, because he's kind of a no bullshit guy. You know,
he's very transparent.
If this was Nomura or Katase, yeah, I don't know if I would trust them as much. But with the guys they have in the helm, I'm going to take a wait and see approach. But I know a lot of people want to make, you know, they want to have this picture cemented before we get everything. But we're a long way from 2023, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's like one of the things, like you said, man, there's just not enough to know. And like Yoshi P is very transparent, so he'll let us know when he wants to. But like, as far as the combat goes, I think it just looks super fun. Like I'm on board with it. And I think one of the things I was discussing when it came to the rating, like a lot of people think it's going to be rated M, even on, I think, the actual official trailer for it, it says likely rated M. Before
I missed that.
Yeah, it was. It wasn't during the live stream of the State of Play, but then when you watch the Final Fantasy YouTube
on the channel,
the official channel, it starts off with likely rated M, and I think that's so cool for me. I'm ready for a mature Final Fantasy. But I was talking to somebody about, they were like, well, I mean, you know, teen rated, you know, all the sells better, which I don't think so. But I was like, yeah, I get it, because if Final Fantasy VII was rated M, I would have never been able to discover Final Fantasy. And it kind of comes back to combat. If the combat is stuck in traditional, like if it's stuck with that turn-based, a lot of the new generation is not going to want to play that. That's a very niche, like,
It's definitely become that, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, sure, definitely got its audience, but it's, you know, you're not going to get that. You're not going to keep moving forward, and I've been so on board with the combat for 16. It looks super fun, and obviously the Devil May Cry battle director being involved, you know, it's going to be stylish. So super excited about it for me when it comes to combat.
So I'll bounce this back to you, Vinny. I guess the question I have for your friends and you, I think a lot of your feeling on the combat for 16 would be predicated on your feelings on Remake. The combat in that. Because even though, yes, there is a 3-party system, you really are just controlling one person, bouncing in and around. Like, I understand you don't care, but your buddies that you're talking to, did they play that and did they enjoy it?
So some of them did play Remake. A lot of my friends weren't super excited about Remake because they played Final Fantasy VII, and when I told them about Remake back when it was announced, they were under the impression that it was going to be like a 1-to-1 remake with updated graphics, basically. And then when they played it, they were upset by that, and a lot of my friends are hard-headed, so it's like my one friend was like, you know, I'm 30 years old, and if I don't like a game, I don't need to finish it. Like, I'm getting to the point in my life where, like, if I don't like a game within the first 3 hours, then, you know, I'm going to move on to something else because my time is valuable, which I understand that, but also, you know, he's like super hard-headed, but I try sticking up for it. Like, you know,
when I was 10, I wouldn't eat the pork that my mom made me either.
Yeah. But like,
I'm just playing, man.
Yeah, no, I feel like, I mean, I say this about Dark Souls too. You know, I would love a Dark Souls 4, but the director doesn't want to keep making Dark Souls, and I think that's his right as a director, and it's their right as a developer to make the game how they want the game to be produced, and we should just trust that they know what they're doing. And we're going to get 3 parts. It was announced that we're going to get 3 parts.
Yeah,
so
the transparency during the last one. I'm sure we'll talk about.
We will get to this stuff, but it sort of just goes organic. It can go wherever. I don't want to forget what we were actually on. But yeah, like, I understand where the trepidation and the uncertainty comes from, because unlike Miyazaki and Dark Souls, Final Fantasy's been floundering. You know, and again, I guess, you know, your feelings on 7, I guess your feelings can go, if you're a Final Fantasy even back to 15 and how you felt about that.
See, I love 15.
I love 15. I loved it a lot. I love 15. And honestly, Remake, I gotta say, man, while we're on the term of combat, Remake is the perfect combination. I loved Remake's combat so much. It is the perfect blend of that traditional that people want, the turn-based type thing with the ATB, I guess, and just action. If you bump that up to hard mode on Final Fantasy VII Remake, it becomes very strategic. It's no longer, you can't just let them do their own thing. You have to keep switching back. You have to think a couple steps ahead. So that brings in the strategy. And I just love that game. I love the combat so much.
I think it's a masterclass in terms of what they adapted, in terms of what I platinumed it, you know, on hard. So even if it is on normal, some of the later battles, like, if you're not swapping strategically, you're gonna get wiped. Like, it's just, and you guys love 15, eh? I do. 15's a game that I think I enjoyed it, but all it does is remind me of what it could have been, and it's we'll leave that for another day, and I'll go over your channel. I'm sure there's a video on it, and maybe we can go back and have a conversation about 15. But I just go back to that original, the 15 announcement from Versus, and almost everything in that fucking trailer is in the game, and it drives me bonkers all the time, because everything around Final Fantasy 15, like the peripheral, Kingsglaive, you know, everything around it, it's like really cool stuff. Yeah. And then there's this story that doesn't make any sense, with plot holes I can drive a truck through. Okay, man, we're getting off topic, but even
I'm just sitting here like yeah, I want to talk to you so bad about this.
let's leave it at this. But they're 10 fucking miles away from the capital that is getting bombed to shit, and they don't even notice. And they all have cell phones, and they can't find out anything. Like, I was just like, come on, guys, like, what are we doing here? And God bless about it, but he's never had a game with a competent finished narrative ever. Like, you look at Type 0, same thing. I mean, I'm glad we got it.
Yeah,
and
I personally really, really love the journey of Noctis. I don't know, that game is very special to me.
Topic. Like, there's so many good things in there. I love the characters. And there's a lot. But anyway,
there's so many things. I love the characters.
I just like, we could go on for an hour with this. And bottom line is, did you get the novel that was supposed to be the DLC?
The story, it ends with 15. I got the novel. I have it right here. Right, okay. It's right here. But I don't read it because I don't like what they did. Like, so for me,
I thought it would be so. Anyway, we'll go in there.
yeah. So, you know, we'll talk about it maybe another time.
So 16. But Daniel, your thoughts? Sorry, Vinny, go ahead.
I heard you bring up Type 0, and so something just relevant to 16. I really hope that they don't do what they did with Stranger of Paradise. They give it an M rating, and they don't lean into it. I would really enjoy and this might sound like wrong, but I really want to see Type 0 style violence in Final Fantasy 16. Like, if it's going to go M, I really want them to lean into it and just go all out with the M rating. I mean, it works for other games, like The Witcher is, extremely popular. And I think the M rating and Type 0, I mean, I know not a lot of people like it, but the gameplay was fun, and they into the M rating. Exactly.
It gives the creators, the writers, obviously the freedom to do what they want. But I totally agree with Vinny. Like, if you're going to give it the M rating, and this is a mainline Final Fantasy, the first time that a mainline Final Fantasy will be M rated, don't just like, give me an F-bomb and then that's it. Because, like, Stranger of Paradise, I really enjoyed the game. I mean, I loved it. I thought it was super entertaining, but I was like, they didn't let Jack go. They didn't let him loose. Like, it's a rated M game, and it didn't give me everything I wanted. There was no, I mean, this sounds wrong, like Vinny said, but there was no decapitations, no kind of, like, there's nothing going on, no blood splatter. So yeah, I mean, just they got to lean into this M rating for 16, in my opinion.
Yeah, I don't think the sales, like what you were stating earlier, definitely made sense for 7 in the day. But we also have to keep in mind that not as many people were playing video games in there. Like, the PS1 was the #1 selling console, and at that stage when 7 came out, what was there? Maybe 65 million sold.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. Right. Like, nowadays, Elden Ring is a critical darling and like the commercial best-selling game of the year. Like you mentioned, Witcher 3. These games, it doesn't matter the theme. So that the sales argument to me, and I hear it sometimes. People want to play good games, and they don't give a shit if it's rated teen or M or whatever. Kids today are going to figure out a way to play it, and I do agree with you, Daniel, that the only thing that's going to stop them from playing it would be just adhering to, purist whining about turn-based. Because, you go from 15, you go to Remake, and now you go to 16. They're going to include some sort of hybrid that embraces a turn-based thing while putting the action combat in the forefront. So as long as you can do a little bit of both and give them the option, great. And I think I applaud them for doing that, because it's hard. They're basically making 2 different combat systems in a way.
I think the beauty of what they're doing is, obviously, like we were talking about, Final Fantasy 16 keeps moving the bar forward. And those fans that do want that turn-based, which, I mean, hey, I never say that an opinion is wrong. Like, I mean, if that's something that you really enjoyed about Final Fantasy, I'm sorry that it's gone. But hey, Bravely Default is out there, and it's like, they're kind of continuing, they're pushing that over there. They're like, okay, turn-based, let's give that to a different brand or different franchise, but it's still very Final Fantasy in a way. So the franchise itself, Final Fantasy, is going to continue to evolve into more action and more style to get more people to play it. So.
Yeah, and just for the record, I love my turn-based games. I'm just saying, moving the franchise forward. This is what they're doing, whether you like it or not, for better or for worse. It is what it is. So we're with that. Daniel, Vinny has a more apprehensive approach to the trailer. What about you?
Oh man, I think that I was setting off, man. It was setting me off. I loved everything I saw in it. It gave us the action. It gave us the freaking kaiju battles between the summons. It's just everything was freaking hyping me up. They showed us the combat. They showed us how that was going to feel. They showed us locations that we're going to be able to walk through. They even gave us screenshots afterwards that was even showing even more. But yeah, I mean, like, I was, after seeing the trailer, I have to kind of disagree a little bit. I was actually a little more knowledgeable of what the story was going to be. I feel like I got a better grasp of what's happening, to the point now I made that video on our YouTube channel that I literally charted the map of Final Fantasy XVI. I took the map they got. I was able to draw borders from what I got from the trailer, from what's on the website. I draw the Dalmekian Republic, the Rosaria, the Empire of Sambrek, and that, just, I was like, all right, with this information, now I can determine where I think the plot's going to go forward. It was I just really loved it. I am so into 16 right now, and it sounds strange for me to even say out loud, but I think I'm more excited for 16 than Rebirth, which is crazy for me to say. So 16 is super exciting for me. I'm so pumped for that game.
And that Soken score, like, my God, man! It just, like, the first, the song from the first one, like, when it hits after Ifrit rips apart what we assume to be Phoenix, and then it's just, and I'll put it in this video here. I was just like, yes, let's go! There's a guy online, Alex Mukala. I don't know if, and he breaks down. They haven't released the track online. He brought his own version by bringing in parts from, because he assumed it was Soken. They hadn't released it yet, but parts from Stormblood and parts from all these, and he recreated it on his own. And I was like, this is just incredible.
He's an incredible talent, man. I actually had him on the show one time to talk to him.
Oh, did you? I was trying to get him on my show, but he probably looked like, I used to freelance all over the place in 2012, 2013. And then I was like, I got better things to do than write for a couple $100, so I just stopped doing it. But I never stopped loving it.
Hard work, yeah.
But, talking about video games, like, who's this guy with like 20 followers? No one cares. But it's cool.
I know the struggle.
I'm very persistent. I'll break him down 100%.
I was going to say, don't actually discount that, because he was on our show. He's a really cool guy and very generous. He's super busy, so if he can't make it, then obviously super understandable. But that wasn't even, we weren't even, I think, past 10 podcasts. Like, it was a really early on in our channel's history. So he's really cool if you can get to talk to him. He even worked on Ben-Hur, like the movie, like
the
trailer. He did the trailer. Yeah, he did the trailer music for that. So yeah, I mean, he's so good. I really actually kind of hope that Final Fantasy, and it seems that Soken has already noticed him, because they had an interview with Soken, and I really hope that he gets to come on and even if it's for a jukebox song from Final Fantasy VII,
Great, this is awesome. He's such a big that track he did. That could have been a possible boss theme. I loved it, and then adaptive audio that you can implement in combat, and then he did a vocalized version. Anyway, Alex, is it Mukala? Is that how you say it?
I hope so, because that's what I call it.
Sorry I butchered your name. If you watch this, shout out, man.
Alex Mukala. Yeah.
Well, I guess we close. So, from the first trailer to this one, did your feelings change for the better, for worse? And I guess, as leading up into summer 2023, what are your hopes in terms of trickled out information? Like, I trust Yoshi P implicitly, and I'm with you, Dan. like as much as I'm into remake and rebirth, like my hopes and dreams are resting on 16 right now, and I'm just hype beyond hype, man.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, like, so obviously the first trailer came out in 2020, maybe. Yeah, like, okay, I was gonna say maybe 2019. I don't know. No, I think it was 2020. But it was a long wait, and we finally had information that I could really dive into, because the first trailer we were like, okay, we got what we wanted, and now we have this long wait. I don't know what to talk about anymore when it comes to 16. They gave us something to talk about, and my hype level is definitely intense. I have it as my wallpaper right now on my computer. So yeah, I mean, between the first trailer and the second trailer, it only got better. And I gotta say, man, every event when they would say, like, you know, put your clown faces on, couldn't stand it. I was like, I don't care, man. I'm not gonna go clown face. I'm just excited. I'm gonna hype it up as much as I can. If it's not there, I know it's coming. Don't be discouraged. It's coming. Yoshi P promised it, and he finally delivered at the tail end of spring. When he said
spring, and it didn't show up that one state of play, the Japanese state of play, but it wasn't quite spring on that one. So I was like, I remember talking to the boss. I'm like, I'll give him that, but if in spring, come on. And the one thing I have to say that I left out, the one thing the trailers, the difference from that one, Awakening, to this one is dominance. I think that's what they coined it. The visuals. A lot of complaints on the original for the visuals. I never had a problem because he admitted afterwards that it was an early days trailer. And Final Fantasy, again, always pushes the visual envelope. So I had no worries, but a lot of people did talk about that. So
yeah, I mean, even like, I'll admit it right now, like even the new Dominance trailer was very great looking, but as a PS5 exclusive, it's just kind of like, yeah, like it still doesn't. I mean, it looks great. It looks fantastic, but it's not where I would imagine it to be. But yeah, I mean, especially if it's going to be open world, which we're not too sure about.
Not sure. Yeah.
And then that's like, okay, that justifies what we're looking at. So yeah, I mean, yeah, that was one of the questions that got answered. What about you, Vinny?
So with the trailer, like talking about the music, I remember when we were watching the trailer, when it got to the end, when they were like announcing the icons, yeah, when they started doing that,
like get up, like just take a walk on that one. I was like, oh my god.
It reminded me of when I watched the Dragon Ball Z Broly movie.
Oh yeah, yes, just that.
When like they're fighting and you hear like in the score you hear them say like Broly and Goku and Vegeta, like when they're fighting, but it's like part of the orchestra and everything. I got like those feelings and I got like goosebumps and I was like, yeah, just really excited for the icon.
That's the highlight, honestly. I think that's the intro to this podcast. I always have my little stinger and then I do a little music thing. That's going to be the intro music, just right there.
That'll get anybody hyped.
It's like,
don't get hyped on it. Look, guys, I mean, we could geek out on 16 forever, but there's a couple more things to cover.
Yeah.
From there, any last words on 16 before we move on?
I'm just excited for it.
Yeah, me too. I mean, we'll talk about it soon when they give us more. But in Yoshi P, we trust, for sure.
Yeah, for sure, man. I know, like, this is going to segue right into it. What's your next topic, I'm sure. But Yoshi P is always super transparent about what he's talking about. And I think, and like you could even tell in interviews with Nier Automata, like, it was like he's just talking about a different game. And then all of a sudden, or I think it was Final Fantasy 11 interview, but whatever, like, he throws in 16 because you can tell he's passionate about it. He's excited for it, just like we are. And he wants to talk about it. And I think one of the things he said was like, oh man, they're going to have me in the office tomorrow and give me an earful about this one.
Well, they had him talking about it during Shadowbringers in 14 and then an Endwalker. And he's like, all right, like, you guys, I get asked about this all the time and I have to talk about it. It's like, it's not like I'm not avoiding it, but whatever.
Yeah.
And
he really wants to. Yeah, and that's what I loved about him. And I think, I would hope so, at least, that Katase and Nomura, that whole team, the creative business one, like, I think they were paying attention. I'm hoping so. Because what happened after Rebirth's trailer, and they released those statements afterwards, they didn't have to do that. They released the statements afterwards talking about how they're excited, what we just showed you. And not only that, they tell us the number of parts in the game. Like, this is going to be a 3-part trilogy. They didn't have to tell us that. And it was so out of character, it felt like, for Kitase and Nomura, that team, to say it's going to be a 3-part trilogy. We're going to... like, basically, this is an unknown journey now. Like, they were very clear about that this time around, to let us know it's an unknown journey for the party. The trailer itself was way more... I mean, there's a lot of people out there that still think this is going to follow the original, but the trailer itself was very straightforward to let us know, like, the past is the past, we can change the future. That stuff is not in the original. Like, all of this, it's going to be a very different thing. It's a very different game. And I, for one, appreciated the name change as well. So Final Fantasy VII Rebirth is so much better than Final Fantasy VII Remake Part 2. Yeah. It's no longer misleading in a way. So I get that. I totally understand the double entendre of remake. I understand it. But when it came to remake, there's so many fans that are upset that this is not a remake. This is not my original story. This game takes a crazy left turn at the end, and even throughout a little bit, but it's definitely not the remake. And then when Kitase came out, a couple, maybe it was like a year later, or it was in an interview with Audrey translated it from Twitter, and he said that please assume Final Fantasy VII Remake will continue on as it always had, like in the original. And I'm like, no way that they're going to try and pull this again. Like, they're not going to try to do this again and convince people, oh yeah, we're sticking to the original, like wink wink. So calling it Rebirth, I feel like it's very important to let fans know that you're not getting the original story. I think it
dispels that illusion. I was actually, we're going to talk about Rebirth now, but I was actually going to do Crisis Core.
My bad. I'm just jumping to it. I'm excited.
Because, I mean, that's the next biggest one for sure. And before we get to you, Vin, now, social media is vocal, okay? I know it's vocal. Mm-hmm. So are fans really that mad that it isn't a straight-up remake? Or is that just... Like, listen, man, I listened to, the Mass Effect 3 ending controversy. They tried to pass that off as a vocal minority, and it wasn't. It was the vast majority of fans that were upset with it. But in this case, I'll just tell you, like, I wanted a remake. I did. And, but after I played it, and I liked these touches and the nuances, and then it just went, like, towards the end, it went Evangelion, remaster, where the first two were pretty much straight ahead, and then by 3 and 4 and the end of 2, it's like, okay, no, this isn't following the original path. And right away, though, you could tell something was up. And then they just dove headlong into it. And, people go crazy about this stuff. And they're like, no way, it's this. We have no idea how this can go. We can hypothesize about it. And we can, make educated guess on where it's going to go, in terms of Aerith and Sephiroth. But the only way we're going to be able to judge what they're doing here, or what they end up doing, is when it's done. Pure and simple. Like, I will hear nothing else. You can tell me that you're upset that it's going in a different direction, but you don't know if it's going to be good or not. You have no clue.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. So that's I would say, like, to answer your question, like, it's interesting because if you don't like the direction of remake, I can, I like speaking for, like I said at some point during the show, I don't think opinions are wrong. So, like, when people say that they didn't like it because it's not the remake they wanted, I think they're justified for that. And I'm just like, every time they speak up, they're shut down hard. And I think it's the other way around, where there's obviously toxic people on both sides.
And those are the ones that get the most oxygen. But the conversation I'm more than willing to have, and I get why people would be disappointed. But my only thing is, there's a good chance they might screw this up. And honestly, Square can screw things up really, really well. But I'll wait. And I criticize them. They're my favorite franchise. But I criticize the shit out of them all the time. And I have no problem doing it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's because you love them. That makes it's the way it is. And that's whenever somebody speaks out like that, as long as it's not like, you're wrong, this is dumb or something like that. But if somebody's speaking up and they're speaking about it, like, I have people on our YouTube channel that will write, I mean, seriously, like a whole, like 5 paragraphs in a comment. And I'm like, that's awesome. They're passionate about this. Like, you can tell, even though it's a bunch of like, I can't believe they're doing this. This is ridiculous, all this other stuff. But as long as they never say like, you're an idiot for thinking this or something like that, then I will take their opinion to heart. And I'm like, okay, yeah, I totally get what you're saying. And I think where it comes down to is, and I've been saying this for a while, it's the marketing of it that was really, they were definitely going for the twist, right? So they were going for that twist, and in order to do the twist, they had to bait and switch. They had to give you what they wanted.
That's the only way it can work.
That was the only way and I thought about it, and I'm like, well, obviously, yeah. I mean, that you can't say, hey guys, we're going to be transparent about this. We're actually going to be, in a way, retconning Final Fantasy VII.
Can't tell people that, because then it ruins the holy shit of it. Or is this actually happening? No, you can't. Like,
you can't do it, and I get it, and like, but the thing is like, the promise has been made, and it's like, we've made you this promise that we are giving you Final Fantasy VII Remake that you have been begging for years, since 2005, when the tech demo was there for the PS3. You have been begging for this game. We're going to do it for you.
And then the games that was 2015 E3 when we got that trailer. Yeah,
dude, I agree. That reaction was insane.
You talked about your friends and how they took with Remake and how that bounced into 16, but I didn't really get your thoughts on how you felt about Remake.
So it was definitely a roller coaster, because I remember advertisements for Final Fantasy VII Remake, not verbatim, but it was along the lines of like, this is going to be a Final Fantasy for people who have played the original, and for people who have never played the original, this is your chance to experience it for the first time. And so, like, those advertisements kind of, like, led you into thinking like this is going to be a one-to-one remake, which, at the time I was like super excited for. And then they have the game.
Just to interject real quick though, I kind of want to do this just to kind of, because whenever somebody says one-to-one remake, a lot of people assume that you're talking about gameplay. Like, you still want the top down, you still want the...
Oh, no. That's not what I mean by...
Yeah, and I have to clarify that a lot with people. It's like, no, we're talking about a one-to-one remake with modernized gameplay and graphics.
Yeah. I get it, yeah.
When I meant like one-to-one remake, I just meant like story.
Yes.
Like just story. But, like, so, most of the game, it plays like the original, and then it doesn't.
There's like little moments where like a whisper flies through, and you're like, "What the heck was that?" Oh, dude, but I don't care, man. This is awesome.
It was, just like
right back to a moment, right? You're like,
nostalgia's coming back. Yes.
Back on. Yeah.
So, I got to the end. My younger sister used to watch me play Final Fantasy VII Original, and she watched me play Remake, and I get to the end, and you're fighting the Harbinger of Fate, and my sister's like, I don't remember this. Me either. I don't either. And I was dissatisfied for a long time with the ending. I played it through hard mode. I replayed it a couple of times, and I was just still dissatisfied with the ending. Yeah. And then we started hearing the people that were excited for the direction that the game took. We started hearing them, and I don't like to be like closed-minded about stuff, so like I didn't like it at first, and then more and more people were like, did you really want the same story where you knew exactly what was going to happen? And I was like, no, they could throw some twists, but what they did was just so out of left field. And so it kept, as time went on, I was like, you know what? I came to the realization of, again, these developers, like, I trust them, and they should be allowed to make the game they want to make. And no matter what, I'm still going to have Final Fantasy VII Original when I want to play that story. I can always play that story. That's not going away. And then, so as I became more comfortable with it, and with the recent trailer for Ever Crisis, I like how they threw in, another shot at a remake in the trailer. And so,
and just mobile, but
yeah. But one of my big things, Daniel knows this about Final Fantasy. Probably the number one thing about Final Fantasies is I like to break them apart, and I min-max everything, and I know the percentage values on items and equipment, and so like I'll do challenge runs. Like Final Fantasy 1, I did one white mage for the whole entire game, and Final Fantasy X, I did no sphere grid, and like so.
It's crazy.
Like I always have the stories from like the original stories, and along with like doing the challenge runs, you have Final Fantasy VII New Threat mod, which is just like playing a brand new game, and then Sunamods makes Echo S, which that looks fantastic, and it's
fully voiced. Yeah, it's a fully voiced Final Fantasy VII. They brought in voice talent and stuff.
I'm unaware of that. You guys will have to tell me that maybe when we shut down.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I don't think it's not out yet, right? It's still in beta.
They got a demo out there to I think out of Midgar. So you got the full Midgar right now. So it's Sunamods. Just anybody who wants to check it out, I think you can go to sunamods.com/echo-s.
All right, I'll check it out. Yeah.
I mean, if anything, that's the remake. That's the remake that I'm gonna play as a remake because they have everything's like retextured. It's Final Fantasy VII Original, but it's retextured. I think it uses the models of the characters from remake.
He's working on that right now. Yeah, it's one of them.
And it has a night and day cycle, so
I know that's pretty great. Weather.
There's a weather system. There's night and day cycles in it. Like, so I'm going to enjoy remake and rebirth now that I have a fresh look on it. At first, I was unhappy with the direction it took, but now I'm like, okay, I want to see where this goes. I'm hooked now. Like, I'm along for the ride.
Yeah.
I want to see where this goes.
Journey.
I know where it's gone. Right. I know where it's gone. I want to see where it goes now. I've played Final Fantasy Original, and I'm kind of grateful that it's not a one-to-one story remake, because now it's experiencing Final Fantasy VII like I experienced Final Fantasy VII Original, and it was, a breathtaking experience. That experience has been taken.
I gotta say, because like Vinny's talking about that spectrum of things, and that's amazing, right? Like I'm so happy that Vinny and so many other people are there, where they're just like super excited for Rebirth because they have no idea what's going to happen next. Like, we have no idea if Aerith is going to even live this time around. But for me, and this is just me speaking. I'm pretty sure I'm the minority. But for me, it's like I don't know, guys. If this was a true remake of the story, and trust me, I love everything about remakes, combat, gameplay, the side quests, the going to Jesse's, everything like that, even the new additional things. But when it comes to changing the story drastically, like the way they have, and this is technically it's a sequel in a way, like, if we're going with the theories of
there's theories out there, we don't really know, but it's
right
in that way.
Yeah, so now we're looking at in the new trailer for Rebirth is very apparent, clear on this. Of now, hey, the past is the past. That's going to stay there. Like, basically telling us once again, like, they're like, hey, we're speaking directly to the fans. Like, Aerith is speaking directly to the fans. There, she's saying the past is the past. That's going to stay. Like, so basically, Final Fantasy VII, the original, is there. But the future, even though it's written in Final Fantasy VII, the original, and in the whole compilation, we can still change it. Like, so basically saying, like, we're talking directly to the fans here. So do not expect anything to go, or like, yeah, expect, sure, they're going to go to Calm. I'm sure they'll follow the same general direction and all this other stuff. And I'm going to be super excited to see those locations, like seeing Calm, seeing the Gold Saucer, Junon, all of these different locations are going to be amazing. But if you would have told me that it's going to be, if it was a 1-to-1 remake of the story, if it was the story, I think I would be more excited than I am now. I would be more excited to be like, guys, can you just wait? Like, just wait how hard it's going to hit when Aerith dies. Like, you know for sure this is going to happen. It's not a question. It's a remake of this. Like, how's that going to feel, dude? Wait, what about that moment when the weapons rise up and, you know, Junon blows off Sapphire's head? Like,
that cutscene, yeah.
Yeah. Like,
or we get to fight Sapphire, which was the original plan. But Aerith, like you were talking about Aerith's line, that's kind of echoes exactly what Vinny's line of thinking was. You know, he had this whole trip and then eventually came around to, you know what? I have the past. That can stay there. But I'm excited about the future. And I like hearing that because that kind of echoes that side. Daniel, I know you're super excited, but you're like, you know what? I wouldn't have minded a 1-to-1 in terms of a new age remake. Whereas me, I'm kind of in the middle. Like, I'm just along for the ride. I would like a little bit of both. But one thing, I'll take the juxtaposition just for shits and giggles here in terms of what you just said. I think, look, there was going to be a ton of interest around this remake regardless. But I think it's garnering extra intrigue and newfound thing just because of the mystery. Like, the cat's out of the bag for the sequel now. If it was just a 1-to-1 remake, we'd be like, okay, that's going to be awesome and it's going to look great. We already know what we're going to get. It's just about how much are we going to get, right? Yes. Of that segment of story. But in my mind, I think the mystery of it, and is Square going to bungle this up royally, or will they deliver on? Because sure, in the back of our minds, like, regardless of how you think of Final Fantasy VII, it's one of the most important games of all time. I believe it's one of the best games of all time. They're not going to treat their property that is this important to them poorly. They're going to put in a ton of time and a ton of thought to make this right. It's not just going to be some Kingdom Hearts nonsense, even though the Harbinger kind of was that. We'll figure that out a little bit later, right? But I'm pumped for it. The most out of the trailer, I mean, I saw some people like, do you guys not remember this? I'm like, Sephiroth and Cloud walking, that's Nibelheim. That's the I mean, maybe it isn't, but I assume that's what it is.
It's for sure Mount Nibel. Yeah, it's definitely walking toward
that. But the Zack stuff, and they're really pushing Zack back into the forefront. Yeah. And again, for better or for worse, they're going to be embracing all that stuff that comes with it, which we can get into the Crisis Core remaster in a minute. But I don't know what they're going to do. All I know is I was kind of on your path, Vinny, about the ending. And even, like, I knew they were going to make us fight Sephiroth, but I kind of didn't want to fight him. Like, you know what I mean? It's like the penultimate thing, and here we are in part 1 having this epic face-off, even though the whole CG and all that stuff was incredible. But when we got to the ending of it, listen, anyone that hasn't finished Remake, just sort of fast forward for a minute or two. But the 7 seconds or left speech at the end of the thing, like that whole cutscene, that fight, man, I was just, this has me 100%. And then the theory about the 7 seconds being the 7 seconds from him coming down and stabbing Aerith. And
that's crazy. It lined up like that.
The hairs on the back of my neck with the music and everything. I sat there with my jaw on the floor for a minute. I'm like, all right, they're doing this. And now I just want to know what is going to happen with 2, which is not going to be 2. It's going to be Rebirth.
Yeah. I mean, dude, I'm with you because it is, like I said, like a long journey for us, or for me personally, a long journey. And I won't go into it too much, but I call it, I went through the 7 stages of grief. Like I say that, like, it's funny, but I almost, like, I do mean it. I mean it sincerely when I say this. when I played Final Fantasy VII Remake for the first time, it was the moment that Barrett got stabbed, and then everything just kind of goes on from there. I was pissed. Like, I mean, like, for me, like, it was just so, I went through denial leading up to it, right? Of like, Whispers did something weird, saved Aerith, ruined the whole pushing the barrels thing over that I was super looking forward to. But I was like, whatever, dude, because this is freaking awesome. Aerith's house looks amazing. So denial. And then I go into anger from the moment that happened. And that entire ending for me was a blur. Like, I was just I was seeing
so much happened. You had to either watch it all again or hopefully play it all again, which I was like, man, I gotta go through this again here and figure
that out. Was it. I was so mad. It's like anger happened and all of this other, and I literally went through like a depression. Like, I was so like bummed for at least 2 or 3 months, and I'm not even joking. Like, it was 2 or 3 months of just complete like, why is this game making me feel like I just got cheated on or something? like I just got divorced or something. Like, what is happening to me? And then like from there, I forced myself to go back and play it again because it's Final Fantasy VII. And echoing what I said earlier about how much that story means to me, like personally, and that's why it affected me the way that it did. I'm like, I don't like this unsteady feeling that I have right now. I don't like not knowing if somebody's going to defy fate and stuff like that. It's like, that's... Anyways, I eventually got to the point where I accepted it. I'm like, I got to acceptance. And I said, you know what? This is not a remake. No, it's not a remake. It's that double entendre thing. This is a new story. It's not a remake, and what they're telling is not done yet. And like you said earlier, Jason, like, it's not done yet. The story is not done. I can't judge it. I want to be involved in this. That's when I started Final FanTV. Like, I want to be like into this game because it's Final Fantasy VII. It's a part of me. And then we started Final FanTV to bring on. We brought on John Eric Bentley. First thing we did. Like, one of the first voice actors that we brought on was John Eric Bentley, voice of Barrett. We got to talk to him. We got to talk to people who love the game. And like Vinny said, we started to, like, the acceptance stage happened, and now I can gladly say that I am past acceptance to the point where now I'm super hyped for Rebirth, because I know not to expect the story that I know and love. I know this is going to be the characters that I know and love, and that's what I'm excited about. It's that. So it was a long journey, man. It was a long journey for me. But I'm there.
A takeaway from the trailer that we got for it, and then some of the comments that the people involved in making the game they posted. I believe it was on Twitter. Where you got those off Twitter, right? The side comments that we read.
I think so. Yeah.
The letters from the team, right? There was about 5 pages. Yeah.
From the Twitter. Yeah.
So, like, logistically, thinking about how Remake ended and how Rebirth is going to start, so one of the questions I had, and I'm not sure if it's answered from their comment, but like materia crossover and level crossover, and how are they gonna explain away, you fought Sephiroth and you sliced through a building. Yeah. And now you're going to fight coyotes and, get your butt creamed. I want to kind of understand that. And I'm the
Mania thing where you start off super powerful and then suck everything away and then have to go get it all. It's going to seem weird. That was honestly one of my questions too. And it's like, you have all this stuff. You can't put me back to level 1, but I can't be level, 50 again. It's got to be some happy medium, but it's just a question of how.
Well, so one of the comments was, and I can't remember it verbatim. I'm really bad at verbatim, but basically it said Rebirth is a good starting point for anybody wanting to get into the series, which seemed odd to me that they would say.
He didn't say it was a good. He said, in fact, even new players can jump into Rebirth and find it an enjoyable experience. I'm like,
so that
I don't know.
was odd to me because to me that says that we're going to be level 1 again. That there's probably not going to be a happy medium. That it's going to be like, or that you're just going to start off with some basic stuff that you didn't start off with in Remake. But the fact that he said, you know, you could start at Rebirth without playing Remake, essentially, I was like, well, where are they going with that? Like, why am I going to start with 2 and not 1?
It's gonna be interesting. Yeah, that's an interesting. You can always go off the theory that Yuffie steals all your materia type thing, but but yeah. So yeah, if you want to move on to Crisis Core, man, I know. Sorry, we could talk about
this is the big thing. Like this, Crisis Core sort of goes hand in hand with a lot of the stuff that is going to be drawn into the timeline. Final thoughts on this? First of all, like my personal opinion. Again, opinions are valid. I know they've said, you know, you can play Remake and it's fine. That game doesn't really work without the context of the original. Like, it relies on the nostalgic beats that brought you for the forefront. Like, having my heart swell the moment I heard Era talk, you're not going to get that. It's not the same. Like, and I don't buy, like, you know, I get there's people that jumped in and they never played the original and then they played it. So I'm like, that's cool. But you're not going to get the same effect. Like, I really think you should have spent the 25 or even 20 hours you can zip through the original on and just enjoy that one. But play games however you want. I can't control you.
Especially with the 3 times speed. It's beautiful now.
Yeah, like with all the quality of life stuff, it's never been easier. And it's still a fantastic game. Like, the only impediment to the turn-based was the speed and the loading screens. Now you just boom, 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 like right through. Great game. Yeah, play that.
Don't turn on, like, limit breakers always, and like, you know, don't just turn the 3 times speed on, and trust me, nobody's gonna judge you. Just do that. 3 times speed is fine.
This is a fantastic game, and Remake just doesn't end the same. It doesn't have the same thing. And
you're absolutely right.
They just want to sell more games. There's no way you can jump into Rebirth without playing the original, or at least the Remake Part 1.
I have no idea. What's going on? I have no idea what he was. What are you on about, man? What is like Nomura? What are you talking about?
You need to buy all these games. We just want to sell you every single one. Just buy it and then you buy the other one. That's it.
You can jump on right in the middle of a trilogy. Yeah, you just want to have to go back and watch the first movie.
Yeah, Empire Strikes Back without the new one.
Exactly. Like, who's this Luke Skywalker? I got to go back to that first one.
I will say this though.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
So a lot of people I spoke to about who didn't like Remake, they played through Remake, they didn't like Remake. I asked them if they're going to get Rebirth, and a lot of people, the majority of people that I spoke to about this, they said, if I can play as Sephiroth in that scene, I'll definitely come back and play Rebirth. So that's...
in which scene? Like Nibelheim?
Yeah, the Nibelheim flashback?
Yes, 100%. Now, I think we're going to have a lot more, too. But my final theory, I'll bounce it back to you guys before we jump. You're still going to get the original game beats. You're going to get them all. But I think they're going to do some Final Fantasy VIII Laguna shit with Zack. And then I think it's going to, I don't know, something like this. And then break apart and then come together and break apart. I don't know.
Probably right at that pivotal moment at the Sleeping Forest. That's probably where it's all going to come together at chapter 17. Like, you know, like that's where it's going to happen.
You know, Square did learn the lesson that you touched on. It was so I would defend them, and I get so angry. You know, this is going to take a decade, and it's going to be 5 parts. I'm like, no, it's not. But they finally said it's going to be 3 parts. Thank Christ. Anyway, sorry. Final thoughts on this, guys.
For me, like I said, man, I'm at the point where I'm excited for this. This is a new story. We're the moment that trailer started and we saw Cloud walking in an open world with greenery and like I'm like, oh my god, that's Mount Nebel in the background. Like, that's all it took for me. That I was like, I am in. Like, I don't even care that I'll always have that little disappointment in my heart that this is not going to be the story that I know and love. But I'm just like, God, I am into this game. Like, already, I'm super excited. You could hear the
Nibelheim music in the back of your head as they were. Yeah, it's so good.
You're so right, man. And like that, you saw my reaction of just like, it almost brings tears to my eyes, to be honest, of seeing this world fully realized like this. It's just so freaking great. I can't wait to see Gold Saucer. I can't wait to see these other locations. And yeah, and you know what? I've been saying, to kind of touch back onto, I always throw a Star Wars reference in. I love Star Wars. This is like the Rise of Skywalker, right? You know, like, either you freaking nail this, because this is Final Fantasy VII. I call it the Final Fantasy VII Saga, because I truly believe that Part 3 is going to be the conclusion of every single story arc in the compilation. I think we're going to conclude Deep Ground, Genesis, even probably Minerva, all of these different things that were introduced.
So they pull in Advent Children stuff too.
And Geostigma, because like all of this stuff is going to be resolved in Part 3. And I call it this is the final movie in the saga, or final game in the saga. This is that Rise of Skywalker. Do you nail it, or do you Rise of Skywalker? So I mean, I think once again, this is a new story for me. I'm excited.
Vinny?
I same thing as Daniel. I'm excited for it. I'm excited to know why they called it Rebirth. They said specifically, you know, remake is named remake for a reason, and we can't wait to tell you why Rebirth is called Rebirth. And you know, it makes me curious as to what the third title is going to be, because it seems like they're following the RE the RE theme with their names. So I want to know what's being reborn in this. Is it the game itself, or
it's the double entendre again? It's the double entendre again. Yeah, it's the game being reborn, and then it's also like I say it's Sephiroth just because the OST from the last game, it was One Winged Angel Rebirth. So it kind of makes me think Sephiroth or Genesis, because it's red, and Genesis is probably going to be bad.
They're all going to bring that in, and we'll get a bet. My final thoughts, even to the most jaded Final Fantasy VII fan who's upset that this isn't a one-to-one story remake, I will look at it like this. There was a lot of things they could have improved. We don't know anything about Genova in the original. Like, this gives them an opportunity to expand on all that, which is incredibly important to understanding who Sephiroth is as a character, who's just as important as Cloud is to making this game work. And really, we didn't get a lot in the original game about what he was going for, what Genova was. It kept showing up. But, you know, we kind of understood, like, who were the Ancients? We're going to get more about that stuff, too. So I know you're not happy, but just stick with it. Maybe you'll learn some other stuff that make the original even better with that context and that little bit of information. So, we'll see. Stay tuned.
Stay tuned, baby.
Yeah. I'm going to go into First Soldier, and Ever Crisis looks great. That'll be the remake for the original that we want, but until they're going to bring that to consoles, I'm not going to play it on my phone. But the Crisis Core remake, remaster, I should say, leaked. Now, what's your experience with Crisis Core? Did you guys play it on PSP originally? Give me your thoughts.
So, I never got to play Crisis Core. When I had a PSP, I think the only game I had for it was Killzone Liberation. Yeah. And so, now, I'm sure I have a PSP somewhere in the void, but this is...
I was just about to go get my copy. I have it over.
So, I never got to play it, but I did get to play a little bit of Before Crisis. There was an emulator that I found that the emulator came with Before Crisis on it.
Oh wow!
And I can't find that emulator anymore. But so I got to play that a little bit, but I had to watch YouTube videos of Crisis Core, and I think honestly, as of right now, I am most excited. Out of all the titles we spoke about today, I am most excited to play Crisis Core, because that is something...
It is. That's huge.
That is... So there are so many things in Crisis Core that I never got to experience.
Oh, yeah. They're going to be important.
Yeah, important stuff.
More than ever now, yeah.
So, I think it's it's obviously strategic that they are releasing Crisis Core Reunion, you know, on the forefront of Rebirth coming out, because I think they're doing that. Well, I believe Daniel said this, that they are releasing that because it's going to be integral to Rebirth's story, and not everyone got to play Crisis Core like myself, so it's going to be an avenue for people to play it again, and they really want people to play it because it is coming out on every console.
Every console.
Xbox, Steam.
Which was a surprise.
Yeah. So I am most excited to play Crisis Core, especially after the trailer. I mean, the music was awesome. And this gives them a chance to fix Genesis to not be such like a character that people just don't enjoy. So this Crisis Core remake, I feel like I'll be playing the Crisis Core that they want me to play to understand what happens in Rebirth. So I am very excited for this one, probably the most excited, because the gameplay looked fun. And all of the stuff that people had bad things to say about it, as Daniel said, it looks like they kind of fixed it, like the DMW.
Well, we didn't see them use the DMW. Hopefully that's improved. Now, that was one of my biggest things about
the rolls, right?
Yeah, where it would like interrupt your gameplay, like it would interrupt your battle.
It's there. If you watch that trailer,
I've seen it. I saw it rolling, but I didn't know if it was going to pop up in the middle of your.
I see what you're saying. Whether they implement it a little bit more seamlessly rather than it jumping in and interrupting you like 5-6 times a battle. And
sometimes you can play a cutscene like while you're in the middle of a battle, and I'm like.
Times, but I get it. And with you, Vinny, I mean, it doesn't bother me as much, but a lot of people are up in arms about the Zack voice actor shift.
That doesn't.
It's not going to bug you though. You don't really have the context of the original.
Right. I don't have the context of the original, but also stuff like that doesn't really ever bother me. Like I said, like I play Final Fantasy for the story, and then after I beat it, I like to pick it apart, and that's what I do with all of them. So like,
it's got a super boss for you, Benny.
Yeah. I mean, people were telling that, like, people were challenging me in Kingdom Hearts 2. They were like, the lingering whisper or whatever its name is. They were like, oh yeah, wait till you get to that. You won't be able to beat that. And I'm just like, all right, I'm a speed run to it then, so I can show you. But
there's one for you in Crisis Core.
It's all about super bosses and gameplay and story. And I'm the type of person where I can play a Final Fantasy that has a bad story if I can fight some strong super bosses. So that's just how I am. So the voice actor thing doesn't bother me. I could see why it would bother people.
If you ever played the original, I really loved Zack's character, like Zack's voice actor in Crisis Core. So it was a little jarring. I'm not gonna lie. Like, and especially you just brought it up. I don't know if you fired it up ever since the trailer. Did you fire it up? I see you had the PSP game.
I only to watch that absolutely glorious one of like GOAT level CGI fight with Sephiroth versus.
Yes. Yeah. Right.
Like that's just god tier. It's to this day, it's probably easily one of the 5 best I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah, I mean it is glorious. I love it. Yeah. So I fired it up too, and I was playing a little bit on my PSP, and I got pretty far. And I'm like, man, Zack's voice actors, I really like it in this game. But then again, we only heard him say like maybe 2 or 3 lines.
I mean, I'll wait.
Yeah. So I'm cool with it. I think it's fine. And to be honest, they nailed the voice acting in Remake. Every character was fantastic. So I have faith that Zack is going to be, or whoever I can't think of his name, the person doing Zack's voice actor. I'm so sorry. I should have that name. But yeah, I think he's going to do fantastic. For me, I think you can also kind of expect the story is going to take a twist. That's just me. I think Yeah, it's called Reunion for a reason, and it's even in the remake font, like Crisis Core Reunion. And I think
that reunion means something in the context of Final Fantasy VII. I mean, it's
absolutely.
Advent Children really referred to it and lent into it. I mean, the original game leans into reunion 100%, but we know what that means, and they're using it for a reason in Crisis Core. It wasn't just an offhand moniker that they added.
Right, absolutely, and I think it's a shame, but it's also really exciting for people. I think it's a shame because the ending of Crisis Core is one of my favorite endings in like all of video games.
Yeah,
it's one of my favorite endings ever. I cry at this ending, Vinny. Like this ending is so good. You know the story. You know what happens to Zack, so it's not like it's a surprise. But dude, it hits hard. It's a shame that I feel like that's going to be snubbed. I feel like Reunion is going to actually end where Remake ended, with Zack walking through it. And I think maybe even we'll get a little bit extra that will lead right into Remake.
And like overlap that thing. I was going to touch on that, but I agree.
Oh, nice. We're on the same page.
And, Square has a habit of phoning in some of these remasters. Like when we saw, like, we can just admit by this point the NVIDIA leak is 100% true. We're just counting days to everything. So Final Fantasy Tactics is coming 100%.
Final Fantasy 9?
So the Crisis Core, like, we don't, and 9, yeah, which is, I don't know. We'll leave that for another day. Anyway, but it looks like you never knew which way they could go. Was it just going to be the PSP just up-res? No, it's not like a whole blowout, but this game actually looks really, really, really good compared to what I was expecting, far beyond my expectations. So they're counting on this to be a subsequent thing, just as important to Remake and Rebirth. And I think they are really going to... That's where the reimagining of all these characters and the lead into Rebirth, that's where it's going to start. And they want you to really dive in and play.
Yeah, and the one thing that I absolutely noticed was the gameplay is enhanced. So when the combat came up, in the original PSP version, attack was assigned to one of your slots. Like you had to hit the R bumper to go over to select materia, left bumper to come back to attack. Every time you wanted to do it, you had to come back to attack. And it was very like, ha, ha, ha. And they improved that in the trailer. That was the first thing I noticed. I was like, oh wow, they're going full remake here. This is new stuff. Another thing that's going to be exciting is that the camera is going to be, on the R stick rather than just the sporadic movement that it did in the original. So it's a full remake. The cutscenes look like they're intact though. That was one thing I did notice, that it was almost, you could do some side-by-side comparisons and it would be exact animations and stuff. Like so that did look like they remained intact. The one thing that I can kind of tack on to Crisis Core subject is I really hope what Vinny said about improving Genesis, I really hope that they just kind of clarify the Nibelheim incident better. I don't like that Genesis was involved. That was one of my biggest things that I hate Genesis about. It's not really that he recites Loveless. That's fine with me. Like that's like it's whatever. It's a character, that's whatever. It was that he was involved, and I'm like, that's not right. I didn't like that.
And it was sort of haphazard. It's like they pigeonholed him in. I just want to see it fleshed out. Like if he's going to be there, make it better. If you want to take him out on that, I'm all for that too, because that's such a specific, important incident to the original game that we didn't even know existed.
It almost took Sephiroth down a notch, and I didn't like that. Like it almost took him.
I think that you're exactly right, Daniel. I think some of the backlash to the character of Genesis, not that he was designed after Gact, wasn't it?
Yes,
it wasn't just that. And, I mean, I'm sure they liked it in Japan. They didn't love it over here, but it was like, we already have a Sephiroth. We already have a George. We don't need another one, even though he didn't talk the same. But it's like, he's not as cool. He's not as badass. He's not as tough. Obviously, they didn't think he was as tough because he gets his ass handed to him. But it's like, I want him to be his own thing. Make him, if he's going to be in this, which we know he is going to be moving forward, make him be his own thing, make him be more important rather than this kind of like other bad guy who, with not a ton of depth, that's ham-fisted into a lot of stuff.
He's definitely
awesome that it's your most anticipated thing, Vinny. Like, I've yet to hear that, but I could see why. Like, it's a new game, you've never experienced it, and for Final Fantasy fans who haven't, it's incredibly important. And just ending my part here, the reason Zach works is because we love Cloud, but he's kind of a downer sometimes. When he gets like later in his high, that's great. But Zach is everything Cloud is, but just like a hype monster. Like, he wants to have fun. He loves fighting. He's a soldier, right? He doesn't have that baggage that Cloud has. And, you know, obviously Square loves him too. That's why they're bringing him back.
Mm-hmm. There's a lot of comic relief with in Crisis Core too.
It's entirely jokes, yeah.
Yeah, it's a lot. There's one moment, Vinny. I don't know, like I think it's in the trailer. I don't know. There's one moment where he's running out of a door and Genesis trips him. Like, he just falls on the ground. He's like, "Oh man!" And like, it's just so dumb, man.
You know.
And like Angel goes on this tangent of like talking about the story about dumb apples picking them from like a farm and everything, and then he goes, "Okay, what's that have to do with me?" It's what Zach said. He goes, and Angel just goes, "There's never a story not worth hearing," and he walks away.
Yeah, it's so good. I'm so glad other people are going to be able to experience this game as opposed to it being stranded on this lovely UMD.
True. Yeah, I mean, the only other way you do it is not very legal.
In grain preservations, if they don't want to do it, you can too, but legal is always best.
But touching up on Genesis, that's one thing Daniel and I are in agreement with, and we spoke about with the remake, is the introduction of Vice, Nero, and Genesis being in remake. One of our fears, I would say, is Sephiroth being kind of either diluted or just overshadowed. And one thing that I would like to see still happen is I want Sephiroth to be the big bad of this game. I don't want to see like, you know, like, oh, here's Sephiroth, but like, also be careful of Genesis, and also be careful of Weiss, and also be careful of Nero. Like, Sephiroth should, in my mind, should be able to just like one-handedly take on all three of them like they are nothing, and then you know, continue on about his day. I will
say remake definitely did that, like, to make him super insanely powerful.
There's never been anything canonically that dispels that, but I mean, I agree with you, and I've heard other people talk about it. It is a worry that, you know, ultimately these are the characters we're here for. I like the other stuff, I really do, but those can't pull away. It's really going to be reliant on the writers and the directing of the game, but again, I'm going to put my faith into them that they're going to do exactly what you said, and he ultimately, regardless of whether these characters get muddled in, he's going to be that ultimate orchestrator, and everything is going to revolve around him. And for better or for worse, spoilers, his knowledge of these timelines that he's already proven to have, that he can possibly manipulate. So, I mean, that'll all be flushed out from Crisis Core forward.
So like Crisis Core being involved, like now it's getting the reunion remake type thing. It's, for me, it shows that Genesis is going to be very important. And then the last time we saw Genesis was at the end of Dirge of Cerberus, where he rises up and said, "There's much work to be done," and he takes off somewhere. Yeah. And it's just like, you know, they're not going to leave that dangling. That's not something that just forget about that ever happened. Mm-hmm. He's coming back, and I think that's one of the worries that me and Vinny have, like what Vinny was saying, where it's like, okay, so if Genesis comes back, is he going to help you take down Sephiroth? Is he going to become the new villain and Sephiroth gets redeemed? Because there's a lot of signs of like classic trilogies of like the villain gets redeemed. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, look at Star Wars and Star Wars and Darth Vader.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so it's like he was a hero at one point. Is there still good in him, Padme? Yeah. See, you know, like, so there's that fear, I guess, of like Sephiroth's end game is actually he wants to do. I don't know. Who knows?
Yeah, like I could go on like just you talking. I'm thinking about things that they could do from a writing perspective. Like they could, maybe Genesis is the wrench in Sephiroth's plan. That was an oversight. He didn't plan for it, or he has his own plan. But like, there's just so many ways you could take it. But he is definitely going to be a big part of it. And
Yeah,
I really think the story will probably hinge, since he will be a big part of it, is how they redeem the character in a lot of different ways. So we'll see.
yeah.
Pumped up.
Yeah, and I'd like to kind of conclude, I guess, for my the Final Fantasy thing, for like Final Fantasy VII, is that I think since we're getting Crisis Core Reunion, I really do think we're getting a Dirge of Cerberus remake eventually down the line.
Yeah,
and I think that's going to happen for sure.
I think it deserves it.
Yeah, and I also want to say that we'll have Rebirth probably have an intergrade in between, and I've been saying this for a while. Like, we had Yuffie's intergrade, and that was to bring in Deep Ground, Vice, Nero, those guys. And I think, as I said, this is the conclusion of the saga. We got to wrap up all of these storylines. I really do think that intergrades are going to be reserved for that Deep Ground stuff. And I want to predict that Vincent will be the main character of Rebirth intergrade, and will hopefully conclude the Deep Ground stuff, or maybe even get ready to conclude it. Everything's going to conclude in part 3 or something. But I think Deep Ground is going to be reserved for intergrade and stay out. Like, I don't think we're going to see Vice in Rebirth or something like that.
Okay.
That's right.
I never even thought of that theory, but yeah, it's definitely a possibility, for sure.
Yeah.
But the fact that we're even having these conversations and the excitement is back around Final Fantasy, it just makes me feel so good. We had so many years there where it was just like, we were like, just give us a kernel, and then we would make shows about it and talk about it, but it's so difficult. Now we have so much to talk about. It's great.
Yeah, and this kind of like harkens back to what you said earlier of our little tiny debate or conversation about if it stayed the 1-to-1 remake of the story, would you be as excited? Would there be a conversation going on as it is now? Like, we've been talking about remake since it ended, and we're still talking about it 3 years later or 2 years later, and we're going to be talking about it even longer for another year and a half. And that's because of its new story. But even though I'd be more excited if it wasn't the same, but you still get that conversation.
Logistically, though, it's a challenge. Square releasing 2, Final Fantasy as their tentpole franchise and their main line in the summer, and then bouncing to essentially something they've never really done before with, Rebirth Remake Part 2 in the winter. That's 2 massive games in the second half you're probably going to see of 2023. It's a lot to balance from a marketing and business perspective. I'm sure they'll be able to maximize it, but that's big for them. Like, it's been slim pickings for years, and it's coming now. Like, hopefully they fix the problems that have plagued them since the PS360 generation to now.
Yeah. And not to mention, like, Stranger of Paradise came out this year, Final Fantasy game. We have Ever Crisis coming out. We had First Soldier come out. These are mobile games, but they're there.
Supposed to be Forspoken at the end of the year. Sort of. Forspoken, and then Reunion, Crisis Core Reunion, winter this year. So lots of coming.
And then you got the Game Awards, where I'm sure we're going to see Final Fantasy 16 more. We're going to see, we're going to get those little nuggets in between. The long wait is not going to be that long anymore. It feels like the home stretch.
Yoshida announced 16. We're ready to talk about it. It's to keep talking about, and I have no doubt they will be. Listen, guys, I could keep going on this for love. Like, we have this love going. Like, Final Fantasy, and it's bringing us together. This is our reunion.
This is our reunion.
Let's wrap up. Obviously, with the low-hanging fruit. Let's start with you, Vinny. What are your top 3 Final Fantasy games? Let's wrap on that. It's super hard, and go, man.
I think the list that we made. I think so. Final Fantasy X is number 1 for me.
Okay.
Then Final Fantasy VII, and then I believe I put Final Fantasy 1 as my 3rd favorite.
Wow.
and then I believe after that was 6. But 10, still to this day, even after all the new games that came out after it, 10 is still my absolute favorite.
And it's funny, like, it gets unfairly maligned by some people because of the laughing scene, which obviously didn't play very far because it has context in it. And honestly, we rip it for the voice acting, but Final Fantasy X is one of the considering the generation, is one of the best voice acted games. Really, I mean, it's phenomenal. I thought, and all the characters have great arcs. I love Final Fantasy X, man.
James Arnold
routinely, like when you poll, whether it's Japan or North America, Final Fantasy X is right in the top 3. Generally, it's number 1. So, all you guys,
I agree.
Final Fantasy.
Oh, sorry. Go.
Oh no, I was just gonna say Final Fantasy X just has so much going on with it, and it being the first, like 3D, like, you know, going from 9 to 10 was such a huge jump in graphics and gameplay, and being the first voice acted Final Fantasy and everything is just, I don't know, so memorable to me.
You know, my favorite, the smallest touch of 10 that I wish more games did is the way they introduced every single area. It's such a subtle touch but it does so much of the heavy lifting of exposition for an area, and then it also gives Zidane's not Zidane. What am I talking about?
He's like, no, it's okay, man. He gets
like his nostalgic narration over each area, and that works so well. More games should really adopt that.
God, yeah, for real. I actually replayed 10 recently, and I have to disagree about the voice acting. I thought it was like what everybody else talking about. I think it's amazing. I think it's really good.
Good. Yeah, I think it's really good.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm with you, Jason. I totally agree with you. Vinny, you have any more? I don't want to.
Vinny,
no, you're good.
10-2. Huh? What are your thoughts on 10-2?
I like 10-2.
He loves
and
it.
Daniel knows this. I like 10-2. Like I said, I don't need a good story for Final Fantasy. I enjoyed the combat.
Best turn-based combat of all time?
No. Final Fantasy X had the best turn-based combat. The conditional turn-based is my favorite.
Okay.
That was my absolute favorite. But Final Fantasy X-2, it was fun. It was bouncy.
It definitely was bouncy.
Yeah, it was bouncy, and it, you know, I keep hearing rumors that they're gonna make a Final Fantasy X Part 3.
Yeah,
and
it's not just rumors. They Katase keeps talking about it.
Dima said he had the script.
Yeah, but they want
someday. Even though we haven't announced how many parts 7 remake's going to be, and then we might do 8 too. I'm like, okay, guys, just relax.
Right, but I think one of the stipulations was they wanted all of their other projects to be finished before they started Final Fantasy X Part 3. And so I think that was one of the stipulations, and it seems like they have a very heavy load for the near future, so I don't think I'm going to even see anything for it for the next 10 years, at least.
Mm-mm. Maybe for that game's 25th anniversary, maybe we'll see something.
Yeah.
Wait, 25th anniversary from 2021 or 2001? Sorry, that would be what 2030, 35. maybe you'll get something there.
2025 anniversary would be 2026.
26. I'm sorry, my math is off. We'll give it the 35th anniversary.
So. From there, Daniel, your top 3, if you can give them to me.
Yeah, man. Well, I mean, it's definitely 7 as my favorite. I think that's fair everywhere. But all right, so number 2, Jason, you're not gonna like me, man. It's Final Fantasy 15.
Wow. I know.
I'm sorry, man. 15
because I don't it's definitely not my least favorite. Not even close, because no matter what, I played that game for 130 hours. I platinumed it. I loved. Now I think the game was absolute dog shit before the Royal Edition. I'll tell you that. I tried it when it came out in 2016, and when all of a sudden Gladiolus showed back up without any explanation, I'm like, I'm not doing this. I'm not. I waited 10 years. I'll wait another 3 until they finish this game. I don't care. And I did wait. Believe it or not, I waited. When they released Royal Edition, I saw this stuff. Oh. So that's the way the combat is supposed to look, they initially introduced it. So then I played the game. So, yes.
That's fair. That is fair.
Have a 15 podcast for 3 hours.
We could totally do that. I would love that. Yeah, that's a fair assessment there. That story stuck with me. Obviously I don't need to talk about my favorite 7. We've talked about that for the past hour. but for 15, I love the story of that. What can I say, guys? You're the best. You guys are the best.
Nice. You're the best.
So good. Walk tall, my son. And then he got turned around. Walk tall, my friends. Come on, man. There's so many lines in this that are so good.
Love that. I love that.
Kings of Lucius, come to me. Trust in me, Dad. Oh, man. And then when he walks in there and he goes, off my chair, Jester. That's where the king sits. Come on. It's so good, man. I love it. The brotherhood, everything about it is so good. I love it.
I feel like 15 would be in my top 3, if not for the thing we spoke about, where like Final Fantasy X is linear and then it opens up. Yeah. And 15 is a cone where it's open.
I call it the funnel effect.
The funnel. Yeah. Where it's open in the beginning and then it becomes very linear after a certain point where you can't really go and do what you want.
It's because they ran out of time and they just, all the shit they had planned for, we can't do that anymore. So here's the Empire and then here's the Emperor and he's just a random mob. Don't listen, man. Like, this game is just ta-ta-ta-ta-ta-ta all over the place. But
I want to talk so bad. I can't.
No, but you can tell, though, I still got love for it because I'm passionate. Yeah. Like, I was so into this game, and I still was. And honestly, anyway, 15. So number 3 for Daniel, sir.
I can see your passion for it, man. I really do. I see it. Number 3 for me is always a tough one because I feel like this is the one that cycles. It just cycles because it depends on my mood. It depends on what I'm feeling that day or something. But I think I said it was 10. Final Fantasy X, I had just replayed it. What I love about 10 is that it feels like, and I did this in our 10 celebration podcast with me and Vinny and Soldier First Class, if you know who he is. He was part of that the conversation, and we were talking about what makes 10 so special when it is extremely linear, more linear than 13 that gets the most hate for it. 13 it gets hate for being linear. 10 is more linear than that. But here's the difference. I say that 10 feels like you're cruising down the boulevard with the window down. It's a breeze. 13 feels like you're on a dirt road and it's just rough and you don't know what the heck is going on. There's dust everywhere. But 10 is just a beautiful ride down the boulevard. It's pretty. The locations are on point. Every location feels like a vacation. Feels so good. And you got a story, a love story that's one of my favorite in gaming. Like, I love Titus and Yuna, or I call him Titus, sorry, Titus and Yuna. I love that story there, man. The characters and how they meet. Every location, you go through it, and it's a beautiful location, but they don't take too long there. I love this about the game. The pacing is some of the best pacing in
great
all
pacing.
Yeah. So you go through every new location and it's just a breeze. Like I said, top down, and you're breezing through every beautiful location this game has to offer. And the pacing is just perfect.
It does have, I've seen that comparison time and time again, especially from 13 Defenders, which, whatever. But 10 does a far better job of, they're not, this isn't the right word, but they mask the linearity of it. Mm-hmm. And it's wrapped up in a journey that you're on. Like, you have a goal, right? The entire story is funneling you, the Summoner and the Guardians, right through, and you know what you're supposed to do. But it does deviate a lot. Whereas 13, you could feel those railings the whole way.
Yeah,
I like 13 too so much.
I got you. Yeah, that makes that's good. Good assessment there.
Yeah. Sorry, Vin, go.
Final Fantasy X, it doesn't do it as well as Final Fantasy VII does, but I feel like Final Fantasy X is the other Final Fantasy that just has just the multitude of characters that are so relatable to where anybody could play the game and you can find somebody you relate to. Like,
Yeah.
I think Seymour is one of the best villains, you know, next to Sephiroth and Kefka. But like Seymour just is like, you know, he's different than everybody else because he has, you know, interracial parents.
Yeah.
And he gets bullied, and it turns him into like he has kind of like like his goal is horrible, but it's like almost like in his mind he thinks he's doing the right thing. Basically, like he's trying to free everybody from the circle of death by just killing everybody. Like, hey, you don't got to worry about it if you're already dead. So, you know, like, but then you have Titus, Yuna, Riku, Waka, Kamari, Lulu, who are all vastly different. Orin, and then there's that the undertones of like fatherhood, and everybody kind of had different upbringings based on their father.
Yeah, like literally the sin.
Like, everyone rips on Waka, but his art to me works so well. Like, you know, the religious, almost the religious back bumpkin. And then you learn about the world, and he evolves his way of thinking, and even he has so much charm with the, you know, this is what we do, yeah, and just it works so well. Man, screw the haters for the voice acting. 10 is so well done.
Thank you. Waka, I liked what you said, man, because I totally agree with you. I hate when people bash Waka. So I was like,
I'm like, come on, man, play the game. He
play
learned
the whole game. Play the whole game. Then you go into 10-2, and he's like. He's you know, they got a kid, you know, he's married to Lulu. He's evolved. He's a good father now.
And then 10 is so good.
Yeah, man. Oh God, yeah. Yep, that's another thing about 10.
Before we get to mine, real quick, do you consider 11 and 14 in your list? Have you played any of the MMOs?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Do you play 14?
Yeah. So here's the deal, man. I didn't like it. Like, so it's one of those things where the MMO is not for me, and I'm not like going to say that it's not good or anything. It's just not for me. It's just not for me. I don't like the. I never really got into the combat. I really felt like I was just kind of mindlessly walking, and there's so many side quests and all that other stuff. But I have so much respect for Yoshi P, and I had like everybody who loves 14. I totally understand why. So is 14 on your list?
The only reason I bring that up, I was a Final Fantasy 11 like original player. I played that game probably for 10 years. I ran the top link shell on the Alexander server. We had a ton of world firsts. I sold things for real money. I sold my account for $5,000 when I was done.
What?
Now, and then I had all the guild now, but the game since then has become completely different where none of that stuff matters anymore. 11 was this moment in time that can never be duplicated because of the hardship that you had to go through to play it. And better people have described this than me, but no one would ever put up with its bullshit today. Ever. That's why 14 exists. It's so streamlined and easy to use, and you can do it with people or not with people.
Not my experience. It was so difficult for me to even
in the MMO context. Let me just say that, like, MMOs are their different animal, but in an MMO context, 14 is extremely easy to use. Doesn't mean it's easy. It just means it's easy. Yeah, comparably.
I'm not even. This is before I even like started actually pressing buttons to play the game. Like I
just trying to sign up.
Just trying to sign up. Like I got locked out like 6 different times. I bought the game 3 times because I kept getting locked out of it. I had to buy it 3 different times just to try and play it because every time I started a Square Enix account or whatever, it got like I would create a character, and then I couldn't. It said these servers are locked out to new users.
You had a hard time.
Yeah, I couldn't even get into a server because it was so popular. And then I had to wait. And then once I finally was able to get into a server, I was locked out, and it said I needed a key to unlock the account. So I was just like, all right, how do I get this key? So I looked that up. And
before even getting into it,
yeah. So I went through so many circles.
That's the 360 version, yeah.
The 360 version, yeah. This was I played it on 360. This is the first time I played it. All the expansions were already out, or the 3 expansions, I guess.
Yeah, Treasures of Ad-Urgan and Chains of Promethea, right?
Yeah, yep. Man. And Rise of Zillart.
The Rise of Zillart, yeah. Yeah. But anyway, I just wanted to touch on that because you guys are hardcore Final Fantasy fans. People have hard feelings.
So is Final Fantasy 11 your favorite of all time?
No.
Okay.
Right now, it's the game I've spent the most time on in my life and probably have the fondest memories of, which is crazy. Other than my tentpole game that got me into this entire thing, which is Phantasy Star, Final Fantasy 2, Final Fantasy 7, but 11 is just crazy. Just the length and the challenge, man. The planning. Like, you'd have to plan overnight for some of this stuff. But anyway, enough about that. My personal favorite. Number 1... It's 7. But on another day, I'll say 9 sometimes. I love 9. It's like, for me, it's like Final Fantasy's Disney take. Like the cartoonishness and of that entire world. I love that game. I think it's excellent.
Beautiful game. And Sakagushi's swan song for Final Fantasy.
Yeah, I mean, I'd probably say the weakest point of 9 is probably the soundtrack, but I still think it's really good, and I'm excited to see what they do with a remaster remake. I mean, it's obviously a remake because we've already had the revamped Final Fantasies with quality of life editions, right? Yeah. So, and I wonder how that affects the Memoria project that they're working on right now. I guess we'll just see.
Yeah, I've actually we had them on the show. They're awesome. Yeah, awesome people. And they're working on it, and of course they're like, guys, or I just want everybody to know that we are not affiliated and all this other stuff. And I'm like, man, but I really hope that they come to you because you guys are doing fantastic work.
And their mindset and what they have going on. I mean, they know what they're doing. I don't know. We'll see. But so I'll go with 7. Number 2, I will go with Final Fantasy IV. I just think it's such a great game. I love the characters. And I like my Final Fantasies. The one traditional aspect I do like is my traditional fantasy, which is 16 is giving us again. I like my armor, my swords, my castles, and stuff like that. As much as I like Final Fantasy gravitating in 7 with the steampunk and 8 diving into the futuristic stuff, which I like less. I do like the traditional setting, so I'll go with 2, and then 3. Again, it could be a million things.
Man,
there's so many equal, but I'll honestly go with 14. I think from the original step into 14 is tough. Now they fixed all that. They've since gone back and streamlined the quests, added flying in the areas to make them easier to navigate and stuff like that. But really, from the first expansion on, Heaven's Ward, the writing is so good, and the encounter design is incredible. The bosses are super epic, and it's like you get this expansion and it's just that, but then you get 5 patches that add on to the story that lead into the next expansion, and I haven't even finished. I just don't. I got kidded.
Are you on Shadowbringers yet?
I was halfway through Shadowbringers, and it's too much for me to keep up with, and I want to get in. I'll jump in somewhere down the line. It's just, it's not a money thing. It's just a time thing. So many games, so little time.
Totally. That's where. So I made it to Shadowbringers. That's where I made it to, and I'll say that's actually where the gameplay got fun for me. So with Shadowbringers, it started becoming okay, I feel like I'm actually doing something. I feel like I actually have to participate in these battles that are happening. Whereas I gotta say, even from Heaven's Word all the way to Stormblood, I was just I don't know. But with Shadowbringers, man, the opening of that game is beautiful. I was okay, I'm a Final Fantasy 14 believer now. I'm all right, I like this game. I love where we're going with it. You get to be the Warriors of Darkness. I'm like, yes, this is amazing. And then and then it just kind of goes. It kind of does its own MMO thing where I'm just okay, I don't have the time. Like you said, Jays, I don't have the time.
There's just so much there. But the one thing I respect that 14 did, and the reason Yoshi P has garnered such a following. They do the nostalgia notes in 14 really well too.
Yeah.
Like they respect the history, but it doesn't seem like it's, oh, here's that thing you like. It's sort of woven into it well.
Mm-hmm.
And, you see. So today I'll say 14. Tomorrow could have been 10. I mean, I didn't pick 10 because you guys said 10. I just want to...
Gotta be different. Yeah.
6. Although I do prefer... I'm one of those guys that prefer 4 over 6. I just do.
Yeah. I think I have that on my
game. I just prefer 4 over 6.
I like the story of Sissel. I call him Cecil, but I like the story of Sissel, and and like going from that, like the beginning of that game where you burn down that village. Like you are responsible for slaughtering this village, and then it was your actions that killed Rydia's mom, and like and just like, oh my god. The path to redemption in that, like you have to have a path to redemption, and I'm just like, God, I love that. You imagine, and I know everybody's gonna be like, please don't say remake again, but could you imagine if that was done in like remake Final Fantasy VII remake? Oh man, well, yeah, with full voice acting and everything.
This is the blast. I've loved talking to you guys. Rarely do I get to talk to people that are into the thing that I'm into as much as I am. And I would love to do this again in some way or form. We're going to have a lot of things to talk about moving forward. But as we wrap up, give me a brief, what's your hopes for the future of your channel, and then just where everyone can reach you guys.
Okay. Well, like just kind of start off to reciprocate. We'd love to have you back, like have you on our show if you like one day to talk, and maybe that can give our audience to say like, hey, check out the Rose experience, so come on to our show one day. That'd be awesome. And for the future of the show, I mean, I'm just so happy and like blessed of the things that we've been able to do. We have actually spoken to Sakaguchi himself.
Wow.
Which was like, that's one of the highlights of anything that happens from here on out. I'm just like, cool. But like we spoke to the father of Final Fantasy, and that was unreal to me. We've spoken to John Eric Bentley, Austin Lee Matthews, voice of Roach, Madam M. We spoke to Mallory Lowe. We've spoken to so many talented voice actors. My hopes for the future of the show is that we can continue to speak with some of the voice talent, some of the people behind our favorite franchise, some of the people that have brought that to us. That's my goal. Like I said, man, I love the industry, the entire gaming industry, and that's who I want to speak with. I want to speak to the developers. I want to, and I know that's going to be really hard to do when there's a language barrier and stuff, but I want to speak to the developers, the people who are bringing this to us, the people behind the scenes, and just really spotlight that. And then I guess not in game, but like long-term goal is that I would hope to maybe one day, if E3 is next year and like that actually happens, I'd love to go to E3 and report on it as Final FanTV, be able to interact with some of the people there, like the people that made the game, and that kind of stuff. That's their, I guess, short-term goal. But yeah, long-term, just keep growing the channel and celebrating Final Fantasy.
Well, you guys seen lots of growth in 2 years, and I can just tell you from talking, your passion's prevalent. I don't think you're going to have any trouble with success. Vinny, I assume your vision aligns with Daniel, yeah?
Yeah, we're usually on the same wavelength about everything. We even make the same movements at the same time.
Somebody clipped our reaction from the Rebirth, and we both went like this at the same time, at the same exact time.
Yeah.
That's great. That's good. Well, listen, guys, thank you very much for joining me. I'll just ask you to stay on the line. Sometimes Zencaster doesn't compile immediately, right? So just give me a couple more minutes after we log off. But everyone out there, this has been episode 3 of the Rose Experience. Today with the Final FanTV, talking about Final Fantasy, and hope to do it again.
Thank you for having us on, man. Thank you.
Thanks again, guys. Thanks for listening.